Well, what is up, guys? Happy Christmas Day. I thought I would do a little chatty video. Several different topics in this video this morning. So first one, thinking about the internet hits today. I don't know what to say really. I feel sorry for the internet hits. I think they're getting a bit emotional thinking about them. Thinking like it's real. We all waking up on Christmas Day. We won't have to worry about being filmed for vlog content. That's not a luxury they get. The internet hits never get to enjoy a Christmas Day that doesn't revolve around being filmed for vlog content. That's how it always is every Christmas. Every Christmas Day they have to put up with being filmed for content, and no child deserves that to be, no child deserves to have to put up with being filmed for vlog content on Christmas Day of all days. It's a day where kids should be able to relax and just enjoy themselves and have a good time. They shouldn't have to worry about their mum and dad filming them, filming them on Christmas Day for vlog content. No child deserves that. And it's just sad to know that there are people out there who think that's fair and think that children should have to put up with that, or agree with that, because it doesn't make sense how anybody could ever agree with that. But I guess that shows who some people really are if they do think that's fair. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of give my little thought on that for today. So the next topic. So this is actually going to give you guys some advice. So what I wanted to say is, if someone knocks on your door and you don't know who they are, do not let them into your house unless you have asked them for ID. This is what my dad always does, and I've always thought it was a very sensible thing to do. He never, if someone knocks on the door and someone knocks on the door who he doesn't know, he won't let them in unless they have ID. If they don't have ID, they're not stepping foot in house. That's basically his rule. That is, if a person he doesn't know knocks on the door and they don't have ID, he doesn't let them in. He only lets them in if they have ID. Now, sadly, so many people have fallen victim to being robbed by people who have knocked on the door and told them that they need to check this and they need to check something, they need to check this, that or the other. And people have let them into the house without asking for their ID, and they've been robbed. Now, unfortunately, this actually happened to one of our neighbours not too long ago, actually fairly recently. A guy knocked on his door and said that he needed to check some pipes or something, and our neighbour let him in and took him into the kitchen, and the guy said to him, "I need you to get all the stuff out from under the sink so that I can check the pipes under the sink." So our neighbour was bent down to get all that stuff out from under the sink, and whilst he was doing that, the guy was actually robbing him. Which is why I guess I wanted to warn people to be careful. Now, what was funny was that about a few days after that happened, a woman that lives a few streets away from us said that a guy tried to jump over her fence, into her back garden. Now, maybe this was the same guy, I don't know. Now, a few years ago, my dad answered the door to a guy. Well, my nan answered the door, and my dad had come back, and my nan was on the doorstep talking to a black guy, and he was there for something or other. He was aiming to be from a particular company, and my dad asked him for ID, and he didn't have ID, so he didn't let him in. So the guy disappeared off, and my dad went in, and he'd phoned the company that this guy claimed to be with. And when he phoned the company and gave them the description of the guy, they were able to confirm that they didn't have a guy matching that description working for them. So, and when obviously he found out that the guy that knocked on his door, that same guy had been arrested not too far away from where they live. He was trying to do the same thing to someone else. So you can never be too careful. My dad was telling us this story yesterday about that guy that knocked on his door. It's absolutely, I mean, it's sad that people are be targeted in that way. Someone on the door saying, oh, I need to check this or I need to check that. And you let that person in and they rob you, it rob people. And it's sad to think that so many people have fallen victim to something like that, where someone has knocked on their door and said they need to check something and then they've been robbed after letting that person into the house. It's just, it's sad to think about, and it feels like the police should be doing more to kind of prevent things like this, but I'm sure the police would probably give the same advice that I've given, and that is that you should never let someone into your house without asking for ID, especially if you don't know them. Like, if it's family and friends, people that you know, that's fine. You don't need to ask them for ID before they come in. But if it's someone you don't know and you're not familiar with, it's always best to ask that person for ID before you let them into the house. Do not let them into the house unless they have ID, or some, or whatever, or some form of identification that proves who they are and proves that they are who they say they are. One of the other things my dad does is that if they do have ID, when he lets them in, he'll stand where they are and he'll watch what they're doing to make, just keep an eye on them. Make sure that they're not, trying to pull a fast one, if you know what I mean. I mean, as I said, no one deserves to fall victim to something like this, where someone knocks on their door claiming that they need to check something and then they're robbing them. It's like, I mean, but I guess some people, do need to wisen up and make sure that they're asking people who they don't know, if it's someone they don't know, make sure that they're asking them for ID before they let them into the house. Instead of just letting them in to the house without having asked for ID. Sadly, I mean, elderly people, no offence, are, well known to fall victim to something like this because, they don't, there's a problem with elderly people, and this isn't meant to try and cause offence, but if someone who they don't know knocks on the door, they don't think to ask that person for ID before they let them in, they just let them in. And that causes a lot of problems. Which is why you always have to be so careful and make sure that elderly people are probably not answering the door, so that they're not letting people in without ID. If you live with an elderly person, it's always best to me that you answer the door and not them. If you're younger people, they'd have more common sense, and they should have more common sense to ask people for ID before they let them into the house. I don't know why anyone would ever let someone they didn't know into their house without asking for ID. But sadly, a lot of people have done that and have made that mistake. And I've unfortunately been robbed as a result of letting this person they didn't know into the house without asking for ID. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't really have to ask people for ID, but that's just the way things are these days. Like, you can't afford to not ask, if someone that you don't know knocks on the door, you just can't afford not to ask that person for ID. Because for all they could be true, they could be wanting to rob the house. So it's always best to ask for ID before you let that person in. Just giving my kind of 2 cents worth on that front. I'm not trying to have a go at people here. I'm just trying to give people some advice, as to not let people into the house who they don't know into their house without asking for ID. So moving on. Obviously, it is Christmas Day. Obviously, I didn't want to do too big a video. I didn't want to do like 2 separate videos. Don't mind, I haven't got time to do that. So I thought I would do like one big chatty style video this morning. So yesterday I was browsing the website of my old school, Cavendish, and I found out that the head teacher of the school, Zara. She's retired now. Her daughter's actually the head teacher of the school now. To be honest, when I think of Cavendish, I've never imagined Cavendish without Zara as the head. Like Zara, it feels like Cavendish will never be the same without Zara as the head teacher. Like, I'm not saying things will go down the pan, but I'm saying that no one can replace Zara. Like, she was such an iconic, well, not iconic, but really incredible head teacher. Like, she was someone that got a lot of respect, not only, she had a lot of love and care and respect for every single one of her students. And we all loved and cared and respected her. We all loved her and cared about her and respected her. And it was the same with all of the staff. The staff respected the students respected the staff. The relationship between the staff and students at Cavendish was truly special. And it was for me, coming from a school where the students had no respect for the staff and the staff had no time for the students, which was at Hayes Ian Hardo, where, the students didn't have any respect for the staff didn't have any time for the students, they weren't really giving the students, the support that they needed. It felt like the teaching assistants and all that weren't really interested in giving the kids the support they actually needed in their lessons. But at Cavendish, it was a very different situation. I will always be so incredibly grateful to, not only to the staff, but to Zara as well, because they helped me turn things around and got me back on the right track. By the time I left Cavendish, there were so many things that I had achieved. I was so shocked by the amount of things I'd achieved in my time at Cavendish. I'd made so much progress and I'd excelled in lessons that in hard I'd have struggled in, for example, DT. That was one of the things I always struggled with at Hardo. But again, that was because I wasn't getting the support that I was supposed to be getting from the staff. I was basically being left to my own devices to deal with it on my own. But Cavendish, it was a very different situation. It's so crazy to think that, I'm not surprised in a way that Zara's retired, because, she was either in her 60s or pushing her 60s around the time I left, which was in 2018. Feels weird to think that it's been 6 years since I left, year 11. Still feels weird to say that, that it's been 6 years since I left. Next year it'll be 7. Next year it'll be 7 years since I left. Crazy to think that. So, moving on, so let's talk some major speculation. So there's been a lot of speculation and attention, of rumours that a second trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6 will be released on the 27th of December, which is Friday. Now, to be honest, I don't know if that's a definite thing. It's just something that's theorised, I guess. People think that it's gonna happen, but I don't know if it will. So a lot of you guys will probably be wondering what I got for Christmas. So I got what I really wanted this year, which was a drum kit. I got a new pair of trainers, which I also wanted. And I got quite a few different other things. I got slippers. I got, I got a few nice different things, which I'll show in another video. I won't obviously show the drum kit, but I'll show the drum kit once we put that all together, which will probably be in the new year. Because it's not a drum kit. It's not an easy thing to put together. As long as you know how to do it, then yeah, it is easy. But yeah, very nice. So I was at my nan's yesterday for Christmas Eve. We had a nice night, apart from a weird incident that happened. So what happened was, we was all chatting and everything. And my nan went into her bedroom to get something that she for the dog that she wanted to show my mum. So that left me, my mum, my dad, and my uncle in the front room. We were sitting there. All of a sudden, my mum started going like, I was saying to me, "What's the matter?" She was saying, she was saying that she could hear voices, and she said it sounded like someone was out in my nan's back garden. So we, obviously, as soon as she said that, me and my uncle both jumped up and we went to look out, and we actually looked outside the back door to see if anyone was out there, but there was no one there. Like, there was no one outside in the back garden. So we were looking at my mum confused. We were like, how she had been hearing voices. Like, she was adamant that it sounded like it sounded like someone was out there in the back garden. But when we, obviously, as I said, when me and my uncle had gotten up and looked outside into the back garden, no one was there. You know, there wasn't even anybody out in our part. There wasn't an explanation for the voices that, I mean, it had very well been someone that was walking past. But I don't know if you would have heard them from inside the house. But the weird thing about it was that it was like my mum was the only one that could hear the voices. Like, the thing that I keep thinking about it is that if it had been someone walking past, if it had been the voices of someone walking past, would we not have all heard them? Would we not? Why was my mum the only one that was able to hear those voices? We weren't able to hear. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear any voices. My uncle couldn't hear any voices. My dad couldn't hear any voices. But my mum was adamant that she could hear voices, and she said it sounded like someone was in the back garden. But as I said, me and mum both got up and looked out into the back garden, and no one was there. So, what was she hearing? Because what was she hearing? Like, it doesn't make sense. Maybe it was maybe it was one of the neighbours. I don't know. It must have been one of the neighbours. One of my nan's neighbours, but I don't know. It was just very weird. Like, she was suddenly hearing these voices. Like, hey, that's weird. Very weird. It's somewhat bizarre. It kind of reminds me of a scary experience we had on New Year's Eve one year. Basically, what happened that year was it was Christmas Eve. Not Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. That's right, it was New Year's Eve, and we'd gone over to my nan's this particular year for New Year's Eve. And we'd staying over there the night, and this was when my nan lived in her old house, not the one that she lives in now. When they lived, their old house was up on the second floor of a block of flats. And obviously it struck midnight, and we all went out onto the back balcony. And we used to do that every time. As soon as it hit midnight, we was all saying Happy New Year, and we'd all go out on the back balcony and shout Happy New Year, and make a bit of a rat hit, which probably wasn't a good thing to do. But we'd gone out there and done that particular year. We'd gone out onto the back balcony, we was all shouting Happy New Year. And all of a sudden there was this flash of lightning, and all of a sudden this sound of someone doing what can only be described as a Tarzan impression. It was someone going, "Oh," but it was really, 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 really loud. It was mega, mega loud. Someone going, "Whoa!" It was just so random, but it was also very weird. And as I remember, we all looked at each other, and we were like, "What the heck was that?" Even my mum said, "What the bloody hell was that?" What's funny about that night is that I'm the only one that is still able to remember what happened that night. The flash of lightning and then the sound of someone doing the Tarzan impression. Like, the thing was, people say, oh, maybe it was a CD player or a stereo, but it sounded like it was too loud for it to have been coming from like a stereo or a CD player or something like that. Um, it sounded way too like I would say it was abnormally loud. You know, it's just so bizarre. It's like there's this random flash of lightning, and then all of a sudden, this sound of someone doing a Mega Loud Tarzan impression. Like, what the heck is going on there? And the thing is, it caught us all completely off guard, and we were like, what the hell is that? You know, that's what we were all thinking of. It's like, what the hell is that? You know, it sounds like someone doing a flipping Tarzan impression. Really weird. But yeah, as I said, I was thinking about the enemies today. But yeah, so that's another interesting topic. But yeah, as I said, moving on to back to one of the topics I was talking about at the start of the video. I am thinking about the enemies today. Like, as I said, it's sad to think about, you know, the enemies and them having to put up with being filmed on Christmas, you know, the vlog content on Christmas Day. Like, no child ever deserves that, and like, nobody should ever think that's fair. Nobody should ever think it's okay or acceptable for them to have to put up with being filmed on other vlog content on Christmas Day. Like, it's just not on. Really, it's not. And, you know, it's not an issue. Like, people to say, oh, it's not an issue. It is. Like, it's just not fair that children have to put up with being filmed on Christmas Day. No child will ever deserve that. And I'm not going to be made to feel like a bad person for having that opinion that no child should have to put up with being filmed on Christmas Day. If people think I'm being unfair, then I apologise. But, you know, I think in a way this had to be said. Someone had to make that point. And I know I'll get a lot of backlash for saying that, but I don't really care, you know. In a way, I kind of want that backlash because I want to, at the end of the day, I want to set the record straight. I want to voice my opinion. And my opinion is that I don't think it's fair that it's fair that any child should have to put up with being filmed on Christmas Day. And if me having that opinion makes me a bad person or makes me an unlikable person, then so be it. But why is it so? But this is the thing that doesn't make sense. Is why is it so bad for somebody to have an opinion for somebody to have that opinion that it's not fair for his to have to put up with being filmed with a lot of content on Christmas Day. Like, I don't get why it's so wrong for someone to have that opinion. And I don't get how someone having that opinion makes them a bad person. I actually think that someone having that opinion makes them a good person because it shows they actually care. And it shows they actually give a shit. Which is more than can be said for a lot of people out there, because it feels like there are a lot of people out there who are actually willing to justify things like this and actually try and say that things like this are perfectly fair, which they're not. And as I said, I don't know how anybody could ever think that it is. I'm not going to apologise for saying I don't think it's fair that a child should have to put up with being filmed on Christmas Day. Why would I apologise for saying that? Why would I apologise for having that opinion? Simple as that. So I hope you enjoyed this chatty little Christmassy video I thought I'd do this morning. I'll see you for another one soon. Bye bye.